The summer season was in full swing on Sodor, and trains were getting longer and heavier. The sidings at Nafford and Tidmouth were becoming a tangled mess with trucks and coaches mixed together. The engines tried their best, but they couldn't shunt and pull their trains at the same time. Sir Topham Hatt put in a call to the other railway for some spare shunters to help. They arrived the next day. Thomas had just arrived at Nafford when he saw them.
"Splatter! Dodge! What are you doing here?"
"Oh, hello, Blue Puffball,"
said Splatter.
Isn't his name Thomas?"
said Dodge.
"I don't know, the boss always called him the Blue Puffball."
"What are you doing here?"
Thomas said with a groan.
"Oh, we're here to work in the yards. I thought it was at the harbor." "No, dummy, that's tomorrow's job. Today is the station." I don't think so. I was sure tomorrow was the station."
The station master walked up.
"Oi, get moving, you two. We've got a lot of trains to sort today."
The two shunters said nothing, but just giggled as they backed away. Thomas rolled his eyes.
"Why did it have to be those two?"
Soon, Sir Topham Hatt was wondering just that. Wherever the shunters worked, the busy yards never got any neater. Coaches were blocked in sidings, goods were delayed, and the passengers were starting to complain. The two diesels seemed to spend more time either racing through the yards or chattering about anything other than their work. Their reckless habits and their constant talking soon spread to the trucks. They giggled and chattered noisily and were very troublesome with pushing or holding engines back. It was becoming so bad, even Salty was growing tired. He normally loved shunting trucks, but the noise and their behavior was wearing him out. One day, Bill and Ben came in with a load of empty trucks for a return trip down from Wellsworth.
"I say, Ben, we don't talk as much as these trucks, do we?" "Not at all, Bill. So if the manager ever says we do nothing but talk, we'll know who to point the buffer at for being more annoying than us."
Salty chuckled as he rolled up.
"Ahoy, twins! Back for more trucks, and I see they just be as troublesome as the first lots."
"Indeed, Salty, and it's the fault of those two diesels. The trucks don't shut up and work is becoming a real drag."
"You're telling me!" Cranky called from above. "I'm glad they aren't here, because if the trucks are this noisy already, those two might drive me to dive into the harbor."
Aye, they be a problem. Me sea shanties work at calming the trucks down, but moment more of them come in, the trucks begin again.
"Something needs to be done to make those two shut up." "Indeed, Bill, but how do you shut up two chatterboxes?"
The red diesel shunter thought for a moment before he suddenly grinned at the twins.
I be thinking, the only way to make 'em batten down the hatches be give 'em a good scare. And I may have this perfect scary story to set those two trouble-making barnacles to rights."
"Oh, what kind of story?"
Bill asked excitedly.
"That be a surprise for when you be off this island. I tell you both in..."
But that won't be forever."
"Sorry, but I can't be letting you spoil the story to them early. You'd be undoing any work me story would do. I just need to get myself over to the yard and tell them my tale."
"You can take that train of tankers. Fresh bunker oil from the mainland. It's gotta go to Nafford to refuel ships there."
"Ah, that'd be perfect. Thank you, Cranky."
"Don't mention it. Ever. Seriously." Salty quickly coupled up to the tankers and rumbled out of the docks.
"Now I'd best be making with the tide and setting sail to the poor yard that has them for shunters. Before more of those trucks return to the site of mischievousness. Keep an eye on the place, Cranky. I'll be back before dark."
"As if I can do anything else but look down on this place," came the grumpy response. Back at the yards, the two shunters were still being careless. They were racing along the tracks, pushing trucks full of coal.
"I'm winning." "No, you ain't." "Totally am, winning by a buffer." "Oh, you keep saying that now, and watch as I win." Ah!
The two shunters ran into the buffers, sending the loads everywhere.
"See, told you I'd win." "No, I did. I hit the buffers first." "That was yesterday, buffers for brains." Well, clearly we're at an impasse." Well, why is that? I don't know, but it sounds right. It sounds left to me. No, it's right. Nah, I'm sure it's left.
A loud horn blast made the two stop. Salty purred up with his train of tankers and stopped, glaring at them.
Avast! You keep tearing around the yard like that, and something unfortunate might happen.
Like what? What do you know?
Oh, wouldn't you like to know? In fact, let me tell you all about it, and maybe you'll turn shipshape.
Salty growled.
Who cares? He's just gonna tell us another boring story of the ocean. Maybe you should learn the rest of the alphabet first. Yeah, so you always get lost at sea.
Salty stared at the twin diesels firmly. He wasn't taking what these two jabbering idiots had to say.
What if I be telling a story, not of the ocean, but on land?
The diesels paused in their shunting and their jaws hung open. This was something they thought they would never hear from the dockside diesel. Salty smirked. He had the troublesome duo hooked.
Before I came to Sodor, I was on loan from Southampton docks to a small shunting yard near Sheffield. The old owner, the heartless pirate he was thinking of selling me for scrap, but decided to send me there to help with the yard foreman out of place in the order. I was grateful for the temporary reprieve from being tossed to the breakers, but not for where I was sent. It wasn't just this place was far from the sea, but it was also because the yard shunters there were. A pair of useless sea serpents.
Salty looked around the yard, glaring at the mess he saw before him. Trucks and coaches were mixed together, and loaded cars stood at loading platforms, blocking the way for empties to be loaded. The two shunters darted past, bumping trucks into each other, chuckling as they did.
You need to live a little.
Spinner chuckled.
Get the salt air out of your radiator!
Tanner sneered.
You're not on the sea, and you don't even live here!
The two diesels, in their chipped British blue livery, were the most awkward diesels the dockside shunter had ever met. Ever since Salty had arrived, the diesels always had an opinion that would go against his own when it came to organizing the yard. And when they did work, they darted around the yard, taking curves and points hard, bumping trucks and damaging them. The trains were late, damaged, or so badly disorganized, the train needed to be reorganized or goods shifted to undamaged trucks.
Racing around the yard like that, you be mighty dangerous. You keep darting like the sharks you are, and you'll end up driftwood.
The two diesels laughed harshly and oiled away to find more trucks to smash. Salty got right to work, humming his sea shanties and putting the trucks into a trance so they didn't cause him any trouble or mischief as he put them into their proper places. The two Class 08 shunters didn't do anything to help. They had more important things on their minds, like bumping trucks into one another or racing across the points as fast as they could. This continued for the next 2 weeks. Salty tried to warn them, but they only laughed and called him names. It all came to a head one afternoon. Salty was pushing a long, heavy train of stone into a siding when suddenly Spinner called out to him.
Hey, sailor, watch this.
Salty barely had enough time to get out of the way of a large wagon loaded with heavy iron pipes rattled over the points where it had been moments ago and smashed into an empty pair of vans. The vans derailed and toppled over. Spinner rolled over, looking cross.
Now why did you not catch it? Look at the mess you've caused.
That be your own mess, matey. You be in the shunting yard, not a rugby court.
Before they could argue any further, the yard manager strolled up. Needless to say, he was cross.
This accident is going to cause a major delay. You engines better get this cleaned up sharpish.
While Tanner went to get the breakdown train, Spinner was left to pull the undamaged trucks away while Salty continued to assemble an outgoing goods train.
This is all your fault. All you had to do was catch the truck and this wouldn't have happened.
Salty, who normally held his tongue with such cheek, finally lost his patience.
I've heard enough village water from you, Spinner. You want to go around smashing trucks and tearing around like a typhoon? Then you go get yourself away from this yard and take your shipmate Tanner with you. You two were made for each other, but don't come crying to me when you both get killed.
Spinner sniffed and said nothing. Salty was then uncoupled from the trucks and began to roll across the yard to pick up more. As he rolled towards the loading platform, he had to stop suddenly as Tanner came rushing into the yard, pushing the breakdown crane. The shunter just sneered at Salty as he went past. Salty ignored him and continued on his way to the loading platform. Before his buffers could even touch the trucks in front of them, a thunderous crash was heard from behind, followed by a scream of pain. Salty didn't waste a moment as he suddenly backed towards the scene of disaster. Tanner had been racing with the cranes and couldn't see that he was on the same line as Spinner and had run hard into the back of him. The crane's boom had been resting on a flat car originally, but had been smashed to splinters between the crane and Spinner, whose cab was pierced and squashed by the crane boom. Luckily, his driver had been outside the cab talking with a plate layer, avoiding being killed in the collision. Tanner was also damaged, as the sudden stop had severely damaged his buffer beam. The two diesels groaned in pain. The yard foreman was livid.
You blithering idiots! Look at this mess. I didn't think it was possible for 2 diesels to cause so much confusion, but it seems I was wrong. Now Salty will have to do all of the work on his own, while you two are mended.
He said, before adding ominously,
Maybe we'll just kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
But he said this to himself more than to the diesels. Spinner and Tanner were gone for the next week. Salty's lease was renewed to keep the yard running, and he managed the work alone. During this time, a stout gentleman came to visit the yard. Salty would see him talking with the yard foreman, though he could never hear what they were talking about. Besides, he had his work to do. When the week was over, the yard foreman spoke to him.
You've been an absolute lifesaver, Salty. The yard has never run better. I'm actually sorry to see you go.
Aye, sir. I was trying to do my best. But where should I go now? You're not gonna send me back to me owner, are you?
No, as a matter of fact, you'll not be going back to your old owner. In fact, your old owner is no longer your owner. I've been speaking with someone from a small island off the coast of England. He came here looking for a useful diesel shunter, and when he saw you, he told me he had to have you on trial. He phoned to tell me that after your time here was done, that you were to travel to his railway to work. He says if you work well and help out with a big upcoming shipment, he'll make you a permanent member of his fleet.
Salty was excited because, as any wise sailor knows, islands are surrounded by the sea.
Oh, thank you, sir. But what about those 2 urchins, Spinner and Tanner? Won't this yard end up in the trouble state again, with those scoundrels around?
Never you mind about those 2, Salty. They have been dealt with, and given the adjustments, they won't be causing such trouble again.
Salty wondered just what the foreman meant by that, but the man was quickly called away and he had to sort out another train. As dusk began to fall, Salty was still working. He was ready to couple up to some vans when the yard foreman waved him down.
That's enough for you, Salty. Spanner will take care of this lot from you. It's time you're off to your yard for a rest before your journey to Sodor.
Aye, sir. That'd be a fine idea. But who's this Spanner?
You'll see. You'll pass him on your way.
Salty, still confused, hissed down the line and headed for the yard exit. As he rolled along, the signal went red, bringing him to a stop. Salty waited in the growing gloom, waiting for the engine to arrive. It came with a sluggish grumble and a growl. It crawled along at such a slow pace. Salty wondered if he'd ever get a clear path. Soon a brake van came into view of the yard lights. Salty's engine purred louder in anticipation that soon the train would clear the points. But soon it stopped, without clearing the points. Salty saw something just behind the brake van, but it was too dark to make out. It looked like a pair of vans. Suddenly, the yard lights came on, revealing the vans to instead be 2 diesel shunters. As the shunter uncoupled the train, Salty stared in surprise. The faces on these diesels were ones he knew. It was Spinner and Tanner, but they looked miserable. Spinner's cab was completely gone, and in its place were bare metal plates. No controls could be seen. Wires snaked out his cab and connected to Tanner's front where wires had never been able to be before, and their couplings had been welded together, fused in an unbreakable chain. Salty instantly knew these two would never move independently of each other ever again. They were fused together forever.
Och, admiring the new Class 13, Salty?
A nearby worker asked.
Class 13, you say?
Salty said slowly.
Aye, all the power of 2 diesels for the price of 1. Front engine's hooked up so it only needs 1 driver in the rear to make them both move at the same time. Should be extra strong and saves hiring 2 drivers. I must say, they look a wee bit familiar. Or maybe that's just my imagination.
Salty said nothing. He looked at the duo, seeing just how sad they were. He wanted to say something, but the signal dropped and it was time to go. So, without a word, Salty left the yard, and the diesel, now known as Spanner, behind. The two 08s were stunned as Salty concluded his story. Then the dockyard diesel turned his gaze back to them. His expression was hard and his voice firm.
So I be careful, mateys, or else maybe the fat controller or your owner will make you both useful in the same way as poor Spanner.
He said before a guard's whistle blew from the back of his train and Salty rolled away, humming a grim-sounding sea shanty. Splatter and Dodge watched him leave. The two bumbly buffoons for once had nothing to say. Soon they cast their eyes to the tracks and got back to work. For the rest of the day, they did their work quietly. They did so without fuss and kept the inane chatter to a minimum. Weeks later, the busy season relaxed, and soon there was not enough work for the 08 twins to do. They left the island quietly. They said nothing to another engine, not one snide remark. The steam engines just smirked when the diesels were not looking. The two idiotic diesels seemed to have been put right, and all the engines had Salty to thank